Mr. Begley, members of the board, we do have several items for board discussion this evening. Our first item is in regard to a board policy. At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Mr. Begley, and members of the board. I have one item for discussion this evening. Under items for board discussion, number 1, policy JFC, which is known as our Student Code of Conduct. In your board packet, I have included the current Code of Conduct as well as the proposed changes. Many of these changes were precipitated by a change in the times, and it has been several years since we have reviewed the code. This review work was completed by a team of building administrators led by Mr. Crapo. This team began by studying surrounding districts' codes of conduct and seeking input from each building prior to recommending any changes. The changes were then reviewed by Mr. Clemens to ensure they are aligned with ORC and legally sound. They were then reviewed by services through the Ohio School Board Association. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, our next item for discussion, safety and security purchase. This particular item is also tied in with an item for board action this evening as well. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Members of the board, as you know, the district was recently awarded a $350,000 safety grant for 7 schools. As we mentioned at the last board meeting, one of our main priorities is to move forward with additional badge access ability in all of our buildings. As we engaged with discussions with the vendor about moving forward, it has been communicated that we may have to wait up to 40 weeks for those materials. In addition, the vendor has also communicated that the cost of these materials will be increasing come November 1st. In the grant itself, the terms and conditions outlined that there must be a contract for the work in place by December 20th, 23 and must be spent by December of 2024. The board action request of urgent necessity later in the agenda does have a not to set to exceed price of $75,000. I also would like to highlight that the plan for the remaining funds will be to complete the bidding process for the installation of the badge access equipment, additional hardware that may be needed for the doors, and upgrade our security cameras throughout those 7 buildings and their systems. Currently, we are operating under 3 camera systems, so this would bring us all underneath one, much easier to manage and also be able to view remotely. So, with that said, the big thing in this discussion is the fact that there are a lot of school districts that are going to be receiving funds and are talking about similar projects. So it is important through discussions that if we can get our order placed quickly, that it will get us in line. If we're already facing the 36 to 40 week lead time, it'd be great to get in line ahead of that. So discuss this with Nancy Lane, John Clemens, and Billy Smith, and everybody was in agreement through the pricing and the process that this is something that the reason why we put it on the agenda for action today. I was at a business manager meeting of Southwest area business managers, and there was a lot of discussion around what our school district's going to do, because they're hearing not only just in the area of badge access, other safety items that are extreme lead times. So this is not independent just to this, but we've identified this as our priority, which why we're kind of pushing this up to the front of the line.
And this is related to the presentation you gave us last meeting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's
And as long as we push it through, so to speak, then we're in line and we won't have that deadline where we'll be excluded from receiving that potentially.
We've actually already received the check, and it did clear, which is nice. So which is another reason why, since it's sitting there waiting, the faster we can move, because the goal will be, I've already started working on the specs for going out to bid on the installation already.
I guess my phrase should have been the product's not available. So if
Correct.
we can't get it, it's not on us. We're still safe territory.
Correct.
Okay, good.
Mr. Perry, you sent the email to the board and explained it again tonight, but just so I understand, even if we move forward tonight, we're still looking at this significant delay in time.
That's correct.
But we still have.
Could be even worse, right? if we
Could be
wait.
even worse, which again is why I kind of want to get in line. Yeah.
And we avoid the price hike,
Right,
which we
sure.
anticipate will be on November 1. That's a big piece.
Yep. That sounds good.
Thank you.
All right, up next, our last item for board discussion this evening, House Bill 583, which is also tied in with an item for board action, item number 4 on page 5. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Begley, members of the board, as you're aware, amidst the ongoing labor shortage that we, like many other districts in the area, have been experiencing some difficulty with obtaining substitute teachers. Thanks to House Bill 583 and ODE, we have the opportunity to resume allowing substitutes who do not hold a post-secondary degree to sub in our buildings beginning on September 23rd. This was discussed briefly at our last meeting, but I wanted to take just a moment to share a little bit more detail about our process that we would follow pending your approval to get non-bachelor subs in our buildings, but doing it in a way that allows us to continue to have quality people with our students, working with our students. One of the most important things that I think is that we need to recognize is that while they are still hired on by Butler County ESC, like our typical subs are, non-bachelor subs will only move forward with the onboarding process with Butler County ESC with my approval and my recommendation. So I will personally be vetting each person that does come forward saying that they would like to be a non-bachelor sub in our district, and going through the process of ensuring that there's someone that I feel would be a good quality person working in our buildings, to then recommend them to Butler County ESC for them to go through that onboarding and hiring process with them. Some of the other requirements with this are that they must hold a high school diploma. They are required to complete all required criminal background checks, as all employees are. They must hold a valid, non-renewable one-year temporary substitute teaching license issued by the ODE, so they're still required to go through the hoops with ODE as well. And the question that was asked at our last meeting, I believe by Ms. Shorter, I just want to reiterate that they would not be working as long-term subs in our building. They would be more of a day-to-day sub, just kind of helping to fill that hole that we're having in our buildings right now. I do think it's important to mention, too, that non-bachelor subs are only approved to work in one specific building. So typical subs, they are hired on by Butler County ESC, and then they can choose to work each day in a multitude of school districts across Southwest Ohio. But when you apply for a non-bachelor sub license, you're applying to work in just one specific district. So for us, what that means is that the people who are wanting to work in Fairfield as a non-bachelor sub, they tend to have roots and ties to Fairfield, and a lot of times are students that they were Fairfield graduates, are now in college, and they want to work as subs on the days they don't have classes, or they've just finished up some of their student teaching, but they don't have their degree and license in hand yet, but they're eager to get into the buildings and start making a difference with our kids. Or it's parents or visitors and grandparents that just want to be able to get in and help our schools and be impactful. So pending your approval, we're hopeful that this is going to help us minimize some of our unfilled positions that we know when they go unfilled causes hardship in the buildings and has an impact on student learning. So by doing this, we're hoping to have them filled to where learning can continue in our buildings as smoothly as possible, but doing it in a way that ensures we still have quality people working with our kids that I would trust my own children. Do you have any questions for me in regards to that?
I would just like to say thank you for actually, putting that information together and giving us the reassurances that you're going to vet the people. I feel so much better with that. That means everything, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Echo the thanks for research and your involvement there. And the additional comments about the parents, grandparents, students, and from the community, I mean, that will hold a lot of weight. The kids may know some of these folks, so even though it's not ongoing, it's temporary. And with what we just talked about with the academy, sometimes those friendly faces, those knowing people, can help make their things a little better. So I think this is great. So thank you.